All right, I'm going to continue on. I missed this. They ask you to go in and by the div right now, because the div didn't show anything when we ran it, what they wanted us to do was to come in here, and in that div was to type in movie list or movies list. Okay, we were told to do that. I didn't do it. There it is. So when you run it, the only difference, I can run it now, but the only difference is now it's going to say movies list. All right. Now, notice what they ask us to do here. All right. We're going to go through here and we're going to change. We're going to go into our route config file here and we're going to change this to movie. What is that going to do? You've learned enough today in this that it should make some sense to you. What is that, what I put in blue there, what does that mean? What is the default controller now going to be? Movie. So remember that right now when you look at this, when we bring up this file here from our app start, when we bring up the route config, this right now goes to home. All right. And it's like, well, what the heck does that mean? Well, we're going to change it to movie. All right. So I made that change. And notice, I'm not sure if I just do a run, if it's how smart it is, because we've got two different projects. I want to see if it says movie list or it doesn't say anything. It still didn't recognize it. Well, but by putting this in here, and I should have made sure, I think I saved, but I'm going to do a save all. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in and I'm going to right mouse click now on my index file in movie, and I'm going to say view in browser. I'm going to see if it's smart enough to pick that up. So see how it says movie index? Still loading their movies list. Now, granted, this isn't like, oh my God, this is fantastic. Am I glad I'm in this class? No, we haven't done anything yet. All right? We're doing all the work to get ready to do some stuff. Not only that, when you take a look, I mentioned this to you before, but I'm saying it again right now. If you look on the screen here, the next thing they want us to do here is they want us to manually add in the data that we're going to use, but we're manually adding it in tables. They wanted us to put a B tag around the movies list. Even that's old. We'd use strong today, but I'm going to grab all of this code. I'd suggest, unless you feel like typing, that you grab all of it like that. Don't grab the line numbers. Copy it to the clipboard. Go back to your project. Go back to your your index file and put in that. So I mean, again, look at what we've done so far. All right? Some bad HTML, for lack of better words. In our div, we put in a heading that said movies list. All right? Then we put in a blank line. Then we put in a table with a border around it. That table will have three headings, one that says rank, one that says title, one that says year. Rank will eventually change. Rank will become our movie ID. It'll become our primary key. All right? And we have number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Our titles, our Shawshank Redemption, Godfather, Godfather Part 2, Dark Knight, and Pulp Fiction. And our years are what are shown there. So again, notice if I save again, I'm going to do a save all. I'm going to right mouse click on my index file and view it in the browser. Now I actually have some data to look at. It's not pretty, but it's some data to look at. All right. But right now, like I said, everything that we've done in here, we could have probably actually done it better without using ASP.NET, without using MVC. We could have written what's in here right now as just a simple HTML program, all right, with really a lot less work than what we've done so far. Okay, so it says we have just showed the list of movie titles along with the year and rank. What if we have this information in a list object or from a database? Well, that's what we're going to do. Start to do in just a couple minutes. All right. Now, one thing I don't like about this, Hannah, the guy who wrote this kind of jumps back and forth. You say, oh yeah, like you. Well, maybe. All right. But what I mean is now, first we did this hello world thing. Then we started on this IMDb project. Now he's jumping over to working on Razor. Then at the end of the project, he's going to jump back to IMDb again. I wish he wouldn't do that. But he did, and I'm just going to follow his lead. Okay? So, it says in most web applications, when you grab information from a database and you show it to a user, you're going to end up using Razor in there and C#, regular C# code. So notice, Razor is the view engine that lets you program in either C# or VB.NET and add that code to the views. So far, the only thing that we put in there for Razor has been that viewbag.title. We haven't put any of our own code in. All right? So the author says, let's look at some examples. Now, what I'm going to do is rather than creating this new project and putting this in here, I want to walk through what the author is going to do because it's nothing that big. All right? Somebody tell me. Does it make sense? All you're doing there is you're creating a variable, giving it a name, and giving it an initial value. But notice that since it is inside of a .cs HTML file, you must put the beginning and ending Razor tags before it. That's why it says, now Razor knows what it is. Okay? And if we do that, and then come in here and type into our code, the value of this is, well, look at that. It's kind of important. If all you do is type in this line right here, all right, the value of pi is @pi, notice what it puts down. Puts down the value of pi is 3.14. But the interesting thing here is this isn't even HTML. That's just text. But in order to tell it we wanted it to go into Razor, we had to do this. So that told it to go into Razor. Grab that value that we set right here. All right. You can use if statements. Remember our random number game that we did back in the days of JavaScript? All right. They have you create something similar to that in here. So what is the author doing right here? Well, again, the author has got a set or a series of Razor statements. First, creates a new random class. Then creates a random number between 1 and 100. All right? And what the author is going to end up doing with this is saying if it's evenly divisible by 2, say that it's even. Otherwise, say that it's odd. Now, I'm asking you this question. Without me typing all this in, and I'm willing to do that, does what's happening in here make sense? We're creating a simple, all right, variable that we're having it give us a random number between 1 and 100. We're taking the number that was generated, dividing it by 2, and checking the remainder. If the remainder is 0, it's an even number. So we're saying so. If the number is not 0, meaning it'll be 1, we're saying it's odd. The key thing for you to realize, if you please take a look on the screen here, is we have to do this to basically put the @ sign in there to let it know to go to C# to get the value. If we didn't put that in there, it would say the generated random number is even, which wouldn't make a lot of sense. Now it'll say like the generated random number 44 is even number. Okay. Now, here's the author. The Razor is so intuitive that it knows when to get into and when to get out of C#. So it knows if you're in HTML, oh, get out of that and get into C#. Oh, you're done with C# now, go back into HTML. All right. That's the beauty of using this. And you will be. All right. So I told you how that was plain text already. Notice what we have here. At if. So this is really starting here, and it's really basically it's ending down there. But the point is, you can use if statements, you can use switch statements, you can use while loops, you can use for loops, you can use do while loops, etc. Any of the constructs that we learned last semester in C# can be used in here. Now, with that said, you're not going to do that a lot. If you're doing a lot of work where you're doing a lot of manipulation and working with variables, you're best off not to do it in a .cshtml file. You're best to put it in a class and do it all in there. These files, by and large, .cshtml files, what are they? They're view files. What does that mean? They show you the user interface. So you should not be doing a lot of actual executable code, so to speak, in there. All right? And that they say that in here too. There's a for each. So what is this going to do? This creates an array. An array with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements in it. Okay? A lot of people would disagree. I would be one of them. 1 is not a prime number. But there's all sorts of mathematical disagreement over whether or not 2 is a prime number or 2 is not a prime number. All right? But this is the way the author did it. Okay? And what does he do here? So he creates this, then he comes in here, and you can see where he breaks into and breaks out of. One of the reasons I don't like doing it like this, I mean, look at the coloring in here. It gets very confusing very easily to see where you're in something. Where am I in HTML and where am I in C#? All right? Okay, back to our IMDb application. So the author says, now that we have this Razor knowledge, okay, now we can go and we can fetch some information. This I'm going to grab, but I want to talk about it with you. All right? So the author is saying that basically we don't need any of this stuff anymore. I'm not going to get rid of it. Instead, please look on the screen here. Remember this thing right here that puts in comments for us? I'm going to click that, and notice it put in Razor comments for us. Razor comments start with an @ and end with an *@. So all I did was comment out what we had in there. So now I changed it to this. Why? Well, I mean, the smart aleck answer is because they told me to. But notice what we have in here. All right? var movie1 equals new. What we're basically doing is we're setting this up. And did it say? I want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. Jeez, Jeff. Oh, trying to press the home key to get back to the beginning of that. There we go. Okay. So this whole thing should be inside of Razor. So the reason my coloring is off on here, and it is all of this right here, they wanted you to put up on the top. Notice now how it picks up the color coding. All right. these are creating 5 different C# variables. Since I want to hold them and use them as variables, I have to make sure they're surrounded with the razor tags. All right, I didn't do that. I'm sorry. So what are we doing here too? We're creating movie 1, movie 2, movie 3, etc. And notice what we're doing. We're saying each one has a rank, each one has a title, each one has a year. Okay? So the advantage that we get here is we are now utilizing these as C# variables as opposed to parts of an HTML table. All right? And I guess I didn't do that one. So we created this list, and then we create an array that contains those 5 elements. All right? Then what they want us to do is to come back in and replace the stuff we had before in there with this. All right? So I want to replace, basically I want to keep this. Make sure I'm doing it correct. All of this can now go. Okay. And what I'm trying to get across to you, probably not very well, but I just want to make sure you do understand that what I am trying to get across to you here is the fact that now what we've done is we've used Razor to utilize C# variables to fill that up, as opposed to using HTML where those weren't even variables. All right? And when we did it before and it was straight HTML, yeah, you could use CSS in there. You could use CSS. I could make them green. I could make them red. I could do whatever. I could change the size. Who cares? I couldn't manipulate those programmatically because they weren't variables. Now they're variables. All right, see if I screwed it up or not. Looks the same. The difference is now, like I said, we used C# variables to fill this up, as opposed to just making it an HTML table. All right? I'm going to finish this one up. It says, see, our code has now become dynamic. And actually, we are finished. Rather than going on into the next one, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to do one more thing, and then I'm going to give you some time. I want you, like I said, if you haven't done so, to please uninstall Visual Studio 2017 and install Visual Studio 2019. Because when I go through the examples, I don't want to confuse you by having my screen look different than your screen. All right? So what I want to do for the next few minutes, and it won't take long, is to go over chapter 1 of your book. And I'm going to tell you right now, tomorrow you're going to get the first test. I'm going to tell you what's going to be on the test, word for word. If you want to do it tonight, I don't even care. All right? Chapter 1 is about 10 pages long. As it says, putting ASP.NET MVC in context. What they do in here is they give you, for lack of better words, kind of a brief history of ASP.NET. And then they talk about why ASP.NET MVC, or the MVC portion of it, became important. What's good about it and what's bad about it. That's pretty much what the chapter is. All right. So they give you, they say it started with web forms, etc., and they go through this. I'm not going to go through any of that. But web forms that we used to use, they aren't that different from us creating our C# form programs. But there are a few things they have. There are a few things that they have that may have made them hard to work with. So let's talk about them. Number one, they use something that was called ViewState. You might say, big deal. It's created for you automatically when you create an ASP.NET web form program. It'll say ViewState equals, and there'll be a couple underscores, and there'll be something that looks like it's about 800 characters wide. When web forms uses ViewState, they save virtually everything you have in the program, and they save it into what's called ViewState. It's not something you can look at and understand at all what it means. It just looks like a big glob, all right, like a bunch of letters and numbers, etc., that have no meaning. Well, that isn't really a good thing. All right. Second, page life cycle. Let's see if I can find that here. When you worked with ASP.NET web forms, these are all the things you had to worry about. That's all the things that happened in there. See this gray thing right here? A lot of stuff went on behind the scenes. And there were very few things you typically would add code to, but there were a lot of places where you could add code. All right? It was kind of a waste, for lack of better words. This is the key one. Now, I'm going to give you a second to read that. I want you to, if you would please, read not just what's in blue, but read this whole thing that's in here. Everybody, please. So where have you heard about separation of concerns before? Somebody should be able to figure this out. When in this program, in the previous two classes, did you use a separation of concerns? In AWD1111, true or false? You separated your web pages into .html files, .css files, .js files. All right? And we talked about the fact that it was good to put your CSS in their own file or files, your own JS in their own file or files. Why? Because it provided a separation of concerns. That's exactly what MVC is designed to do. Your user interface files go in your view files. Your model files contain your data stores. Your controllers contain your logic that allows the models to do their thing, and the data stores, or I'm sorry, the user interface to spit out its thing. All right. Previously, you had limited control over the HTML. This was another one. Whoops. Low testability. It's very hard to test web form programs. So they say, well, it's not that bad today. We've got web standards and REST, which I'm not going to go over. Agile. Some people are really big on Agile. Tell you, maybe I've shared this with you before. I don't know, but I'll try to keep it very short and sweet. When I was a professional programmer, the first project that I worked on took 2.5 years. All right, it was supposed to be 1.5 years, but we realized a year into it that it was going to be late by a year. So it was 2.5 years. All right. It was one big project. That was part of the problem with it. When you work with an agile development, you take a big project and you chunk it into a bunch of littler, smaller projects. You might break a big project up into 30 mini projects and have one due every 2 weeks. That's what Agile allows you to do. Not only that, typically with Agile development, you have the end user involved throughout the entire process. All right? Anybody ever heard of this? TDD. Anybody? Ever heard of that? Typically what developers have done almost since the beginning of time is you write you write some kind of a document. I'm going to write the software that does this. Then you write the software, and then you test the software. Makes sense, doesn't it? With test-driven development, it sounds like you're doing it ass backwards. With test-driven development, you write all of your tests first, before you write the software. And wait a minute, Jeff, that every test will fail. Yes, it does. You write all of your tests first. Every one fails. Then you write the code to make your first test succeed. Then your second test, etc. So you do it backwards, but typically it ends up actually being done faster and better because you start to realize some stuff based on starting with the end in mind that you wouldn't realize otherwise. All right, and that's what they talk about in here. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Ruby on Rails is another framework that you can use, all right, like ASP.NET. Okay, Node.js, if you weren't aware of this, I was talking to the first year people this morning, and one student there, he asked me, he said, what's the best programming language? I said, well, what a great question. I said, for what? And he gave me some stuff, but it was real general. And I said, well, it depends. You know, some languages are better for some things. But one of the things that's happening, especially in web development today, is a lot of web applications are being written only using JavaScript and nothing else. The stuff that you're learning to do in here could be done using just JavaScript. But it would have to be using JavaScript for the server. Things like Node.js and React, and there's other examples. All right. Paul and Evan are of the mindset that this class that we're in right now should change to a Node class, and it might within the next year or 2 years. I don't know. All right. And they were like, well, what do you think? I said, you know what? I'm retiring in about 5 years. Whatever the hell you guys want to do, I don't really give a damn. That's pretty much what I told them. That's why when I tell them stuff like that, they just look at me and smile. All right. I'm like, I don't want to rock the boat. So whatever you guys want. That's what they talk about in here. Again, it's all JavaScript. Okay. Now, here's your test. You're going to come in here tomorrow. You're going to get a piece of paper. In fact, I'll give it to you electronically. And it's going to say, give me 5 benefits of using ASP.NET MVC, or 5 advantages, and give me 5 disadvantages. Now, here's the key point. If you copy it right from here, you're not going to get any points. Forget that. Anybody can do that. I want you to take what's in here and put it into your own words. That is showing me that you've got a level of understanding. All right? So if you say one of the benefits is the MVC architecture, fine. Explain to me what you mean. It only has to be 1 or 2 sentences, but you explain to me what you mean. Extensibility. If something is extendable, it's easy to add to it. All right? So that's another thing about it. Tight control over the HTML and the HTTP. Okay? Testability. Web forms really fail because they're very hard to test. It's much easier to do test-driven development or write tests for MVC code as opposed to non-MVC code. It's got a powerful routing system. I've just started to show it to you. All right. We're going to learn how you can change, for example, something that looks more along the lines of this to something that looks more along the lines of this. You may have heard the term pretty URL, where you get rid of the ampersand, and you basically you get rid of all the garbage that you put into your query string. All right, you're going to learn how to do that. Built on the best parts of the ASP.NET platform. So I'm going to ask you a modern API. It's open source. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, basically, like I said, to go through, and I want you to use your words. Okay. I'm not sure, I haven't written it yet. Paul just asked me to send him a copy of it so he can see it. All right. So I don't agree with the author. The author says there that this book has got 2 parts. I think it has 3. All right. The first part are the first 6 chapters. That's true. I agree with him 100%. The next part are about the next 7 or 8 chapters, and that's the project. But he said that's the rest of the book. I don't agree. All right. I think that the project is part 2, and part 3 is other stuff you might want to know. All right. That's just me. All right. So again, the example code, you can go out to APress and get it. When I tried running it, it did not work. Because one thing about it is it was built, I think, back for 2013, but I'm not sure. All right. So I'm going to ask you, like I said, it's going to be something about that. All right. It'll be basically, show me 4 or 5, whatever it is. And let's see. So for instance, now this is I'm just going to show you, this is not going to hurt anything. This is my grade book. So when I grade the DotNetOdyessy thing that we're working on, notice that's all of you. So I put a grade in there. All right. If John does it and it's perfect, I can just click the check mark here, and if it's worth 50 points, it'll put a 50 in there. All right. So the only reason I'm showing you that, and I don't want that, is if we look through coursework, what you're going to find in here, ASP.NET Chapter 1 Written Test. So that's going to be worth 50 points. So if I ask you to do 5 things, each one will be worth 10 points. If you explain it to me and you use your own words, you will get 10 points. If I think, no, either you don't get it or you're using the words that are in the book, you won't get 10 points. Does that make sense to everyone? I mean, like I said, especially with these tests, with the written tests, I want you to know exactly what you're getting into. All right? And with a lot of you, with the written test, that's where you lost a lot of points. If everybody ends up getting 50 out of 50, that makes me happy. All right? So I will give you that tomorrow. We will go over some more stuff tomorrow. All right? And I would like it if you'd stick around. If you say, well, what if I've already got it, if I already got 2019? If you want to leave, then leave. All right? I'm not normally going to let you leave early. I should check because Charles hates it when I let anybody leave early. He was not happy this morning because I let the class this morning leave 15 minutes early. All right, I was getting nasties from him already, so I don't really like that, and it's an hour before we're supposed to be finished. All right. If you have not yet uninstalled Visual Studio 2017 and installed 2019, please do. Now, if you look in here, the visualstudio.com downloads, if you look at this, you'll want to choose 2019. You'll want to choose the free download. And many of you did this last time, and you might not have been there the day that I did it. I don't remember. But when you go through it, it's going to ask you which parts do you want. When you get to that point, feel free to ask. I showed it on the video. You want to choose ASP.NET. All right? But there's some stuff in there that you're never going to use. You're like, I never even heard of this. You probably don't need to download it then. All you're doing is you're adding more bloat to your hard drive. You want to do that. That's not my call. It's your call. But at a minimum, you're going to have to put in, you have to choose the ASP.NET. Does that make sense to everyone? And like I said, if you do go out here, I mean, hell, I can show this right now. I just don't want to have, my install works. So I don't really want to uninstall it again and reinstall it with you. All right? But like I said, if you go out here and you go to the ASP.NET right here, that's the first one right here. Uninstall, and it's 15 minutes long. All right? And I walk you through everything that you have to do in there. So I'm going to expect that by tomorrow, everybody has Visual Studio 2019 in. We're probably going to go back and possibly even redo part of that version 1 of that project that we just looked at. We'll have all the code. It will all be working. All right? Plus, again, as soon as you come in, I'm going to give you that piece of paper or email you that, okay? And it's due at the end of the class period. All right? All this stuff that they keep writing and they make us put into our syllabi, it's like if you're sick or you miss tomorrow, you're supposed to be able to make it up. Charles always tells me, and I'm going to ask him again, that he doesn't like it when you can make up anything, any test. Some of you know you were sick last semester, something happened, and I let you make up tests. All right? And at least once I let him know that. All he did was shake his head. All right. So you should have an idea. Again, there you go. This is going through and removing what's in there. All right? I don't think it's a very hard process. Questions? All right. Otherwise, if you have done it and you do want to leave, you can leave. But I do plan on keeping you for the entire period, or at least most of it. I think that Devin will tell you that at least for the Android class, we stayed till the whole period virtually all the time. And no one's asked, but is it possible to go and actually install 2019 right over 2017? The answer is yes, you can do that, but Microsoft recommends you don't. That's why I did the uninstall first, then an install.